The reins snapped 30 feet before the cliff. Briar Hale heard the crack beneath the cheers, and her training came alive. The ceremonial carriage carrying Luna girl Celia Arden lurched sideways as one lead horse threw up its head. Wheels struck the stone road. Ahead, the procession narrowed toward an unfinished bridge with its eastern rail removed. Beyond it waited 200 feet of winter air. People screamed, "Briar Hin, clear the road." She shoved past a nobleman and sprinted toward the team. Celia clung to the carriage rail while the driver fought the loose reins. Briar saw the broken main trace bouncing beneath the left horse, then something worse. A secondary strap had twisted around the axle. If it caught, the carriage would flip before reaching the bridge. Briar pulled the saddler's knife from her belt, caught the nearest horse as it passed, and hauled herself onto the carriage step. The animal screamed and nearly threw her beneath the wheel. "Briar!" someone shouted. She ignored it. One hand buried in the horse's mane, she reached beneath the harness. The tangled strap snapped tight. Briar cut it. The carriage jerked sideways. The rear wheel slammed into a stone marker, and Celia was thrown against the interior wall. One horse broke free. The carriage spun half around and stopped with its front wheel hanging less than 3 feet from the edge. For several seconds, the Luna-choosing procession went silent. Briar dropped down, landed badly, as pain shot through her ankle. "Lady Celia?" Celia appeared in the doorway, pale but upright, blood near her temple. "I'm alive. Stay there until the wheel is secured." Celia stared at her. "You just jumped onto a runaway carriage." "Yes, that was incredibly stupid." Briar drew a breath. "Also effective." Celia almost laughed before guards surrounded them. Then the mood changed. Commander Torrenvale crouched beside the harness. "Who maintained this carriage?" "I inspected it yesterday." "And this morning?" Nell Mercer checked it before dawn. Before Briar could say more, a royal saddler rose from beneath the carriage. "Commandez." He was holding a knife. Briar stared at the dark handle, narrow blade, and brass pin. Her knife. She reached toward her belt. The sheath was empty. "That's impossible." The saddler turned the blade. "Hailmaker's mark." Briar stepped closer. "Give it to me." 2 guards moved between them. Vale looked from the knife to the harness. "You carried another blade?" "I was carrying that one." Her pulse stumbled. The knife she had used to cut Celia free was gone. The saddler pointed toward the severed main trace. "The cut matches the blade." Briar looked at the leather. "No." A cold voice behind her said, "Explain." The crowd parted. Alpha King Darius Blackthorn approached without hurry, wearing no crown, only a coat fastened with the silver thorn of House Blackthorn. He looked first at Celia's bleeding temple, then the carriage, then Briar. Vale handed him the knife. "Belongs to Briar Hale, Your Majesty. Royal Stable Omega." She had direct access. Darius examined the blade. "Hale?" Briar knew he recognized the name. "My father has nothing to do with this." "Your father was Elias Hale. Master Saddler Elias Hale. Convicted of sabotaging Commander Rourke's mount. Accused. Convicted. He died before anyone discovered the difference." "Silence." Celia stepped from the carriage. "Your Majesty, Briar saved my life." Darius glanced at her. "And someone endangered it before she did." Briar forced herself to look at the harness. "The cut is wrong. The blade is yours." "That isn't what I said." She pointed toward the damaged trace. "Leather stretches when it tears under strain. This strap was cut before the carriage began moving." Vale said, "Which you had access to. So did 23 other people. But the weapon belongs to you." Briar looked directly at Darius, then investigate why. Darius handed the knife back. "Briar Hale will be confined until the Moon Council hearing." Celia stiffened. "Darius, if the evidence changes, so will my judgment." Briar laughed without humor. "You've already made the judgment." His eyes met hers. "I have your weapon in sabotaged royal tack, your access to the carriage, and a Luna who nearly went over a cliff. You have a story that fits what you already decided to believe." A growl rolled through the crowd. Fenris, the Alpha King's enormous black and silver royal wolf, stood at the far end of the road, amber eyes fixed on Briar. Fenris came toward her, stopped 6 feet away, inhaled once, then walked straight past. Darius frowned. "Fenris?" The wolf ignored him and disappeared into the royal stable yard. Commander Vale seized Briar's arm. Move. They had gone 10 steps when shouting erupted behind them. Briar turned. Fenris was coming back with something large in his jaws. He pushed through the guards and dropped a black leather saddle directly at Briar's feet. The royal thorn emblem gleamed on its silver pommel. Darius went still. Briar knew that saddle. Every saddler in Blackridge did. It belonged to the Alpha King. One load-bearing strap had been cleanly severed. Briar crouched and touched the cut. Same angle. Same unnatural smoothness. Same faint compression along the edge. She looked at the ruined Luna carriage, then the king's saddle, then Darius. Your Majesty. For the first time, uncertainty appeared on the Alpha King's face. Briar stood. Whoever tried to kill your Luna practiced on your saddle first. Fenris stood over the saddle, as if daring anyone to touch it. For several seconds, no one moved. The procession road was crowded with nobles, guards, and horses, but the noise had drained out of the morning. Briar could feel every eye on the severed strap at her feet. Darius looked at Commander Vale. Clear the road. No one leaves the grounds. Vale hesitated only a second. Yes, Your Majesty. Orders spread quickly. Guards moved to both ends of the bridge. Celia was escorted toward a waiting carriage, though she argued the entire way. I'm not leaving until someone tells me what happened. You nearly died, Darius said. So did your saddle, apparently. Briar almost smiled. Darius did not. His attention returned to the black leather. Take her to the tack room. Vale's grip tightened around Briar's arm. Briar pulled free. I can walk. Darius looked at her once. Then walk. The tack room sat behind the main stables, thick with the smells of leather, saddle soap, iron, and cedar oil. Briar knew every bench and cabinet. Normally, the place calmed her. Not today. Darius placed his saddle on the central work table. Celia's damaged harness lay beside it. Fenris settled beneath the window, amber eyes fixed on Briar. Darius folded his arms. You said the cuts were the same. They are similar. That is not the same answer. No. It's the accurate one. Briar pulled on work gloves and bent over Celia's harness. Whoever did this wanted the cut to look simple. One blade, one motion. Easy to blame on whoever owned the knife. She moved to the king's saddle. This one is cleaner. Darius stepped closer. Meaning? The person practiced. His jaw tightened. Briar angled the strap toward the window. Something caught the light along the edge. Lantern. A guard brought it closer. Briar scraped the cut with a narrow awl. A dark blue-green residue gathered at the point. Vale frowned. Dye? No. She rubbed the residue between two gloved fingers, smelled it, then looked at Darius. Seal wax. Vale frowned. People use wax everywhere. Not this kind. Briar crossed to a shelf and pulled down 3 blocks. Red for crown deliveries, black for military stores, brown for merchant receipts. She held the residue beside them. Moon Council wax is harder. It has powdered slate mixed into it so the seal survives winter travel. Darius's expression cooled. You are certain? I spent 6 years repairing council document cases because their messengers kept dragging them through snow. Celia almost smiled. Darius noticed. Why would wax be on a blade? Because someone coated the edge before using it. Vale shook his head. That would make the knife less efficient. Exactly. Briar looked at Darius. A clean blade leaves a clean cut. Wax creates drag. Someone wanted a blade to leave a distinctive mark. Your mark, Darius said. My knife's supposed mark. The distinction hung between them, like taut wire. Darius looked at Vale. Where was Briar's knife before the procession? Briar answered. On my belt. All morning? No. Vale's eyes sharpened. I left it in the west tack room for perhaps 20 minutes while Nell and I checked the carriage wheels. So someone could have taken it, Celia said. Or she could have done it herself, Vale replied. Briar looked at him. You seem committed to the least interesting version of this story. Fenris made a low sound beneath the window. Briar glanced toward him. At least someone agrees with me. Darius's eyes narrowed at Fenris. Do not encourage her. The wolf's tail struck the floor once. The tension shifted, but only for a moment. Briar turned back to Darius's saddle. She traced the load-bearing strap, then froze. Wait. Darius stepped closer. Briar flexed the leather. This wasn't cut to fail when you mounted. What difference does that make? A lot. She positioned the strap as it would sit around a horse's barrel. At a walk, it would hold. At a trot, probably still hold. The remaining fibers separate only under repeated lateral force. Darius's face hardened. Briar met his eyes. Full gallop. Celia looked toward Darius. When were you next planning to ride at full gallop? No one answered. Briar already knew. 3 days from now, Darius would lead the King's Moon hunt across the northern ridge, riding at speed through ravines, frozen forest, and open stone country. Darius's voice dropped. The moon hunt. Briar looked again at Celia's harness. 1 public accident, 1 sabotaged saddle. 2 targets connected by the same method. Then she saw what bothered her. The cut on Darius's saddle was more precise than the one on Celia's carriage. Not similar. Earlier. Briar slowly straightened. The carriage wasn't the first attempt. Darius watched her. Then what was it? She shook her head. Not an attempt. His expression changed. Briar pointed to the King's saddle. This was the practice cut. Then to Celia's harness. And this morning was the rehearsal. The room went still. Darius looked at the saddle that would have carried him into the moon hunt. Briar's voice lowered. Whoever did this isn't done yet. Briar expected to be taken back to his cell after the discovery in the tack room. Instead, Darius ordered the doors locked. No one enters or leaves without my permission, he said. Commander Vale glanced toward Briar. Including her? Especially her. Briar folded her arms, comforting. Darius ignored the comment and looked at the damaged saddle again. The hearing is suspended. Suspended, Briar repeated. Not cancelled. His gaze shifted to her. You found evidence of a second sabotage. That does not erase the first. It does if the first was staged to frame me. It suggests that possibility. Briar laughed once, without humor. You really do love careful wording when the damage belongs to someone else. Celia, seated near the window while a healer cleaned the cut on her temple, looked between them. I would pay money to see someone speak to the king like this every morning. You almost died, Darius said, and yet I remain capable of enjoying things. Fenris lifted his head from the floor beside Briar's boots. Darius looked at the wolf, then at Briar. You will assist the investigation. Briar's expression hardened. While everyone outside still thinks I tried to murder her, I cannot publicly clear you before I know what happened. But you were comfortable publicly arresting me before you knew what happened. That landed. She saw it. Darius said nothing for a moment. Then he turned toward Vale. Bring everyone who handled the carriage or the king's saddle in the last 48 hours to the lower stable hall. Within half an hour, Briar stood among grooms, saddlers, carriage hands, guards, and 2 nervous servants from the Moon Council. 23 people, just as she had said. Darius remained at the far end of the hall, saying little. Briar preferred it that way. She questioned people about tools, cleaning schedules, deliveries, and who had access to the West tack room. Most answers went nowhere. Then she noticed Nell. The young Omega stood beside a feed bin with both hands twisted into her apron. She would not look at Briar. Nell. The girl flinched. When did you check Lady Celia's carriage? Before dawn. Was the harness already attached? Yes. Did you see anyone near it? Nell swallowed. No. Too fast. Briar stepped closer. Nell. I said no. Fenris rose. Not growling. Just watching. Nell's face went white. Briar lowered her voice. He isn't accusing you. I know. Then who are you afraid of? Nell's eyes flicked toward the upper gallery. For less than a second, Briar followed the glance. Empty, but she remembered it. Before she could press harder, Celia entered the hall. Every servant straightened. Nell nearly dropped the brush in her hand. Celia stopped in front of Briar. Can we speak? Briar glanced at Darius. Am I allowed? His jaw tightened. Celia smiled faintly. I think that means yes. They moved toward the open side door, where cold air carried the scent of hay and snow. Celia studied Briar for a moment. You saved my life. Apparently, I also tried to kill you. I have not decided which version of you is more inconvenient. Briar looked at her, then, despite herself, smiled. Celia's expression became more serious. There is something I did not tell the king. Why? Because I did not think it mattered. That sentence has caused most disasters in history. Celia almost laughed. Yesterday evening, Lady Verena changed my carriage. Briar's smile disappeared. Changed it how? I was assigned carriage 1. She said the silver trim was inappropriate for the Luna choosing and ordered me moved to carriage 2. The damaged carriage. Yes. Briar turned immediately. Carriage 1 still stood in the eastern bay. She crossed the yard fast enough that Darius and Vale followed without being asked. Briar climbed beneath the chassis, checked the wheel pins, traces, buckles, and suspension straps. Nothing. No cut. No replaced buckle. No wax. Perfectly clean. Darius crouched beside her. So someone needed Celia in the second carriage, or needed everyone to believe the second carriage was chosen naturally. Vale frowned. Why? Briar slid farther beneath the frame. Her fingers brushed something tucked behind the inner lining. Leather. Old leather. She pulled it free. A narrow strip, darkened with age, stamped near one end with a tiny maker's mark. Her breath stopped. Darius saw her face change. What is it? Briar did not answer. She rubbed the mark with her thumb. A small thorn branch crossed by a crescent line. Hale work. But not hers. The stamp had not been used in 10 years. Celia stepped closer. Briar? Her throat tightened. My father made this. Silence settled over the stable. Darius looked at the strip. Why would part of your father's work be hidden in Celia's carriage? Briar looked toward the empty upper gallery where Nell had glanced. For the first time since her arrest, fear moved beneath her anger. And someone inside Blackridge had kept the pieces long enough to know exactly where an old wound would hurt. Because whoever framed me isn't copying me. She held up the leather strip. They're rebuilding his crime. Briar did not sleep that night. She sat at a narrow work table in the lower archive room, with her father's leather strip beside one candle. Rain tapped against the high windows. Somewhere above, Blackridge Palace had settled into uneasy silence, but boots still passed the corridor every few minutes. Darius had ordered the old case files brought down. That surprised her. What did not surprise her was how long he had stood before giving the order. You knew, Briar said. Darius looked up from the sealed box Commander Vale had placed on the table. Knew what? My father's case. I knew the name. That is not what I asked. Vale shifted near the door. Darius's face remained unreadable. I read the judgment years ago. Briar laughed softly. Of course you did. My father signed the final order. Her fingers stopped against the table. For 10 years, Elias Hale's name had been spoken like a warning. Stable masters lowered their voices around her. Noble clients inspected her work twice. Children had once scratched Trader's daughter into the door where she and her mother lived, and the Blackthorn crown had made it official. You believed he did it, she said. Darius did not answer quickly enough. That's why you recognized my name. I recognized the case. You recognized a bloodline. His jaw tightened. Briar. No, say it correctly. You saw my knife, heard Hale, and suddenly the story made sense. The evidence made sense. Because it looked familiar. Darius held her gaze. That was answer enough. Fenris, lying beside Briar's chair, lifted his head. Darius glanced at him. Come. The royal wolf did not move. Fenris. One black silver ear twitched. Briar looked down at the wolf, then back at the king. Even your wolf thinks you're difficult. My wolf has poor judgment. Finally, something we agree on. Vale lowered his face, hiding what might have been a smile. Briar turned to the box. Open it. Vale stepped forward. Those records are crown sealed. So was my father's grave. Open it, Darius said. Vale broke the wax. Inside were witness reports, tack diagrams, payment records, and an evidence packet tied with black cord. Briar moved through the pages quickly. Commander Rourke's saddle failed during a border inspection, she said. My father's knife was found in the tack room. The girth had been cut. He had access. Darius nodded once. Sound familiar? His expression hardened, but he let her continue. Briar spread 2 reports side by side. Who handled the physical evidence before royal investigators? Vale leaned closer. Moon Council Review Office. Briar looked at Darius. The room changed. Why? He asked. Commander Rourke was bonded to a Council Luna. Any attack involving a Luna household passed through their security office first. She tapped the second report. Celia's carriage had followed the same chain before reaching royal guards. Darius stepped closer. That proves procedure, not conspiracy. I know. She hated that he was right. Then she found the inventory. One girth strap, black leather, Hale workshop stamp. Vale opened the packet. Inside lay folded dark leather. Briar touched it. Her face changed. Darius noticed. What? She turned the strap over. This is not his. Vale frowned. The mark is there. Yes, that's the problem. Briar ran her thumb along the stitching holes. My father stitched royal tack at 8 holes per inch. Always. He said 7 looked lazy and 9 weakened the edge. She counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Darius moved beside her. The bevel is wrong too. He rounded his corners before oiling. Whoever made this rounded them after. Vale stared. You can tell after 10 years? I learned on scraps from his bench before I could read. For the first time, Darius looked at her without suspicion. Not softness. Respect. Briar set the false strap down. The evidence was replaced. Darius's gaze sharpened. Before the trial? Maybe after. Why replace it after conviction? Vale asked. To preserve the story. Briar pulled the inventory closer. If someone needed the original strap again, they could remove it after the case closed. No one would check. Everyone already knew Elias Hale was guilty. Darius's mouth tightened. The silence afterward differed from the one on the bridge. That morning, Darius had possessed an answer, and Briar doubt. Now the answer was beginning to fracture. He reached toward the leather, then stopped. If my father condemned yours on false evidence, he said, I will uncover who made that possible. Briar kept her eyes on the tag. Uncovering it won't give him 10 years back. No. Then don't confuse justice with repair. Her father had not only been framed, someone had kept pieces of that frame for 10 years. A knock sounded. Celia entered carrying a folded Moon Council schedule. I found something. She placed it on the table. Tomorrow before sunrise, Lady Verena Cross was scheduled to inspect every vehicle and saddle assigned to the Luna-choosing household. Darius looked at the name. Briar was not ready to call it proof. Not yet. She reached into the evidence box again. A small wooden tag dropped onto the table. One side carried the Hale workshop number. The other held a faded notation. Transferred by order of Moon Council Review. Darius read it twice. Briar looked at the false strap. This isn't my father's work. Her voice dropped. Someone replaced the evidence after they destroyed him. By sunrise, Darius had 3 theories. Briar disliked all of them. They stood in the abandoned council records room beneath Blackridge Palace, where dust lay thick across the shelves, and old Moon Council decrees filled locked cabinets from floor to ceiling. Celia had joined them before dawn, still wearing the bandage over her temple. Commander Vale guarded the door, while Fenris slept beneath the table with one eye open. Darius placed the forged evidence tag beside the schedule Celia had found. Someone inside the Moon Council had access to your father's case, he said. The same network may now be targeting me. Briar leaned against the table. May? The sabotage of my saddle is difficult to interpret otherwise. That is exactly why I don't like your theory. Darius's eyes narrowed. Someone prepared my saddle to fail during the moon hunt. Yes. And you believe that is not an assassination attempt? I believe it is more than one. Celia looked between them. That sounds worse. It is. Briar spread the procession records across the table. Think about yesterday. If they wanted King Darius dead, they already had access to his saddle. Why risk sabotaging your carriage first? To test the method, Vale said. That's what I thought. Briar tapped the record. But they already tested it on the king's saddle before the procession. We proved that from the cut progression. Darius went still. Briar continued. So Celia's carriage was not practice. It was meant to be seen. Celia's expression changed. Seen by whom? Everyone. Briar pointed toward the list of attendees. 7-pack delegations, Moon Council witnesses, noble families, royal officers. Half the people who matter in Blackridge politics watched a Luna candidate nearly die because someone supposedly inside the royal stables sabotaged her carriage. Vale frowned. And Briar was arrested immediately. Exactly. Darius looked at her. Briar did not soften the next words. You helped them. Silence. Vale shifted. Careful. No. Briar faced the king. He found my knife. He saw my name. He gave them the ending they needed before anyone asked who wrote the beginning. Darius's expression hardened, but he did not interrupt. Celia slowly pulled a folded parchment from inside her cloak. There is something else. She placed it on the table. A Moon Council petition. Darius opened it. His face changed after the first paragraph. What does it say? Vale asked. Celia answered. It proposes temporary expansion of council authority over Luna security, royal transportation, stable staff, and palace access. Briar felt cold satisfaction settle into place. When was it written? Celia pointed to the date. 2 days before the carriage accident. Vale swore quietly. Darius read further. The petition cited concerns about unreliable lower-rank personnel and recommended removing Omega workers from positions involving the royal household until a security review could be completed. Briar laughed once. There it is. Darius looked up. What? The story. She pointed at the document. An Omega with a traitor father sabotages a Luna candidate. The crown fails to stop it. The Moon Council already has the solution waiting. Celia's face had gone pale. They needed my accident. They needed your survival, Briar corrected. That silenced everyone. Darius stepped closer. Explain. If Celia died, there would be grief, investigation, chaos. Too unpredictable. Briar tapped the petition. But if she survives an attempted assassination, frightened and visible, the council gets a living symbol of crown failure. Celia stared at the paper. They used me. Yes. Fenris lifted his head. Darius began pacing. And 3 days later, my saddle fails during the moon hunt. Briar nodded. One disaster becomes 2. Vale understood first. The same suspected network. Exactly. Briar looked at Darius. First, an Omega tries to kill the future Luna. Then the Alpha King dies in what looks like the second strike. Darius stopped moving. Celia whispered, and with the king dead, the council invokes emergency authority, Vale finished. Briar pulled another document from the pile. Not just emergency authority. She had found it 20 minutes earlier, buried beneath old succession procedures. If the crown is incapacitated while Luna selection remains incomplete, the Moon Council may appoint an interim governing chamber until pack consensus is restored. Darius took the page from her. How long? No limit is written. His jaw tightened. Celia looked sick. This was never about choosing a Luna. No, Briar said. It was about manufacturing a kingdom frightened enough to surrender power. For several seconds, only the sound of rain against stone filled the room. Darius looked at the forged evidence from Elias Hale's case, then at the petition drafted before Celia's accident. Something in him seemed to settle. Not anger. Responsibility. When I arrested you publicly, he said, I strengthened their claim. Briar met his eyes. Yes. Vale glanced away. Darius did not. I was wrong. The words were quiet. Briar felt something inside her shift, but she refused to let him escape that easily. Privately, his gaze sharpened. She nodded toward the ceiling, toward the palace, toward everyone who still believed Briar Hale had tried to murder a Luna. You condemned me where the kingdom could see it. Understanding entered his face. Before he could answer, the archive door burst open. A stable boy stood there, breathing hard. Your Majesty. Vale reached for his sword. What happened? The boy looked at Briar. It's Nell Mercer. Briar straightened. What about her? She's gone. The room turned cold. We found blood in her room, he said. No body. Briar was already moving toward the door when the boy added one last thing. Commander, there was wax on the lock. Darius looked at Briar. She did not need to ask what color. The boy swallowed. Moon, Council Blue. By the time Briar reached Nell Mercer's room, the blood had already dried dark against the floorboards. It began beside the narrow bed and ended at the door. Not much. Enough. Commander Vale crouched near the stain while 2 guards searched the tiny room. Darius stood in the doorway, broad shoulders blocking half the corridor. Fenris paced once, nose low, then stopped beside Briar. She ignored everyone. Nell hates wool, Briar said. Vale looked up. What? Briar crossed to the bed. One blanket remained neatly folded at the foot. The second was missing. She says it makes her skin itch, She would never take the stable blanket unless she had no choice. Darius's gaze sharpened. You think someone wrapped her in it, or used it to move her without leaving blood everywhere? Briar knelt near the door. The lock had been forced, but not from outside. A thin smear of Moon Council blue wax marked the iron plate. Too obvious. Briar touched it with one gloved finger. This was planted. Vale frowned. You were convinced the council was involved an hour ago. I still am. That does not mean every clue wearing their color is honest. Darius looked at her differently at that. Not because she agreed with him, because she did not agree with herself too quickly. Briar stood and scanned the floor. Mud near the window. A few strands of gray horsehair near the bed. One broken piece of hemp cord beneath the washstand. She picked it up. Carriage knot. Vale took it. You can tell from this? The twist is doubled before the hitch. Stable grooms don't tie it that way. Delivery teams do. Darius stepped closer. Where would a delivery carriage go without passing the main gate? Briar was already moving. The old service tunnel. The entrance had been sealed years earlier beneath the Western feed store, but the door still existed behind stacked grain crates. Fenris reached it first and began clawing at the bottom. Darius shoved the crates aside. A cold draft breathed through the crack. Vale drew his sword. Guards with me. No, Briar said. Everyone looked at her. She pointed to the mud on the threshold. 2 sets of boots went in, only 1 came back out. Darius's expression hardened. All the more reason you stay here. Briar stared at him. You don't get to turn me into evidence and then lock the evidence away. This is not about evidence. Then stop treating me like something that belongs behind a guarded door. Someone is hunting everyone who knows something. Then help me find Nell. For 1 tense second, neither moved. Then Darius stepped aside. Stay behind Fenris. Briar almost argued. Almost. The tunnel narrowed quickly beyond the door. Dampstone pressed close on both sides. Fenris moved ahead, silent except for the scrape of claws against rock. 20 yards in, Briar found gray horsehair caught on a splinter. 30 yards later, the missing wool blanket lay crumpled beside the wall. Blood stained one corner. Nell, Briar whispered. A faint sound answered from deeper in the dark. Vale raised his lantern. They found her behind a stack of old delivery crates, wrists bound, one side of her face bruised. She was alive. Briar dropped beside her. Nell. The girl flinched so hard she struck the wall. It's me. Nell's breathing came in short, broken pulls. I didn't tell them. Tell them what? Her eyes darted toward Darius. Fear closed her mouth. Briar did not push. Later, Darius removed the cloak and placed it around Nell's shoulders. She recoiled at first, recognized him. Something passed across his face when he saw her fear, not anger, but the cost of having failed to protect her. She cut the ropes. Fenris suddenly growled. Not at Nell. At the crates. Darius turned. Vale pried open the nearest lid. Inside lay a royal saddle. Then another. Then another. 6 in total. Briar's stomach went cold. She pulled the first one free and examined the girth. A hidden cut ran beneath the decorative stitching. The second had the same weakness. So did the third. Darius moved beside her. These are assigned equipment. Briar checked the stamped silver plates. Not random equipment. She read the names. Alpha King Darius Blackthorn. Alpha Marcus Val. Alpha Joran Creed. Alpha Silas Vane. Alpha Corwin Ash. Alpha Tarek Morrow. Vale's face drained of color. All 5 voted against expanded Moon Council authority last winter. Darius looked toward the tunnel entrance. The moon hunt. Briar nodded. Every one of these men was scheduled to ride with him. At speed. Across Stone Gorge. She turned the final saddle over. The cut was buried so carefully beneath the stitching that no ordinary inspection would find it. This was no longer sabotage meant to frighten a kingdom. It was execution disguised as accident. Nell made a weak sound behind them. Briar looked back. The girl was staring at the saddles. She whispered, They said the king was only the beginning. Silence swallowed the tunnel. Darius's hand closed around the edge of one crate. Briar looked at the 6 names again. 1 king, 5 loyal alphas, 6 saddles designed to fail at full gallop. She finally understood the scale of the plan. They aren't trying to cut off the crown, she said. Darius met her eyes. Briar's voice dropped. They're trying to cut off everyone who could keep it standing. Darius canceled the moon hunt before sunrise. Briar learned about it from Commander Vale. She found the royal order pinned beside the stable door, sealed in black wax. All hunting parties suspended, all riders confined to palace grounds, all assigned saddles impounded. Her anger arrived before the fear did. He canceled it. Vale folded his arms. After finding 6 sabotaged saddles, that seems reasonable. It is exactly what they expect. Darius entered the stable aisle behind them. Who expects what? Briar turned. The people who built this plan. The hunt is over. No, the hunt is evidence. It is a killing ground. Then make it ours. Vale quietly stepped away. Darius did not. You are suggesting we let the assassins proceed. I'm suggesting we make them believe they can. No. Briar stared at him. You didn't even hear the plan. I heard enough. That is becoming a habit. Fenris, lying beside an empty stall, raised his head. Briar stepped closer. They hid 6 saddles because they expected no one to inspect them properly. If we cancel now, they know we found the tunnel. They burn records, move witnesses, destroy tools, and whoever ordered this disappears behind council procedure. I can interrogate everyone involved. On what proof? Darius went still. Wax? Saddles in a tunnel? A forged strap from my father's case? Enough to expose a conspiracy, maybe. Not enough to prove who controls it. Nell saw something. Nell is terrified. She can testify. If you drag a frightened 19-year-old Omega into a council chamber before she is ready, they will tear her apart. I would not allow that. You cannot command fear out of a room. Silence spread between them. Darius lowered his voice. And I will not use you as bait. Briar's anger sharpened. There it is. What? You trust my hands when you need answers. You stop trusting me when I make a choice you don't like. This is not about trust. It is always about trust with you. Darius stepped closer. If the hunt proceeds, whoever did this may change methods. Then we change faster. You could die. So could you. That is different. Briar laughed once. Of course it is. You know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean. You think your risk belongs to the kingdom and mine belongs to you. Fenris stood. Darius said, I am trying to keep you alive. And I am trying to stop this from happening again. The words landed harder than she intended. Briar looked away. On the workbench lay one recovered saddle, its hidden cut barely visible beneath the stitching. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. There is something else you did not tell me. Darius did not answer. That was enough. Lady Verena reviewed my father's case. Vale stopped walking. Darius's face changed. Briar felt cold spread through her chest. You knew. I learned it last night. And said nothing. I had no proof that her involvement was criminal. She signed the evidence transfer. She signed hundreds of transfers. It was my father. I know. No, you know a case file. Darius's control slipped. Telling you before I verified it could push you toward a conclusion we could not prove. Briar stared at him. You decided which truth I was allowed to know about my own family. I decided not to compromise an investigation. That is the problem. She stepped back. You keep calling control discipline. Briar's throat tightened, but she refused to let him see it. You were right about one thing. Facts matter. She looked at the saddles. But facts do not belong to you because you are king. She walked past him. Fenris followed. Stay. The command stopped the wolf. Briar froze. Fenris looked from Darius to her. For one painful second, she expected him to ignore the king as he had before. He did not. The royal wolf sat. Something small inside. Briar cracked. She kept walking. Darius did not call her back. Celia found her an hour later in the unused eastern tack room. Briar was repairing a bridle that did not need repairing. You look terrible, Celia said. Thank you. I meant emotionally. Mochkinda. Celia closed the door. I brought something. She held out an ivory envelope. Moon Council seal. Briar took it. Inside was an invitation bearing Lady Verena Cross's signature. By authority of the Moon Council, the king's moon hunt would proceed at sunrise. Briar looked up. The king cancelled it. Celia's expression was grim. They know. Know what? That he cancelled it. Briar looked back at the signature. Verena had not challenged Darius privately. She had overridden him in writing. The hunt was no longer only an assassination attempt. It was a test of whether the crown still controlled Blackridge. Celia folded her arms. So what do we do? Briar stared at the invitation until the anger inside her became something colder. Useful. We let them think they won. Celia's eyes narrowed. Briar set the letter beside the useless bridle. Tomorrow, the moon hunt happens. A pause. But not the one they planned. Briar returned to the main stable before dawn. Darius was already there. No crown, no guards within earshot. Only the 6 sabotaged saddles lined along the wall, Fenris beside him, and cold blue morning light slipping through the windows. Briar stopped at the doorway. You disobeyed your own order. The hunt proceeds by council authority, Darius said. That was not my question. His jaw tightened. I came to hear your plan. For a moment, Briar said nothing. Then she walked to the workbench and spread 6 new girth straps across the wood. My trap, my rules. Darius looked at her. Agreed. That answer surprised her, more than an argument would have. Briar lifted the first strap. We replace every sabotaged saddle with one that looks damaged but is safe. Whoever inspects them will believe the original cuts are still there. Vale entered behind Darius. And then? We tell different people that the king will ride a different saddle. Darius understood first. A controlled leak. Exactly. Briar pointed to 6 small bottles of oil. I marked each replacement with a different symbol. The oil is invisible in ordinary light. Under moonfire, it glows. Vale picked up one bottle. Where did you get this? My father used it to mark custom work before final polishing. Darius looked at the bottles, then at her. You had this yesterday? I had the recipe yesterday. The oil took half the night. A faint sound came from Fenris. Briar glanced at him. At least someone appreciates craftsmanship. Darius almost smiled. She continued. Each suspect hears a different saddle number. If one is switched, we know which information moved. And if none are switched? Vale asked. Then our leak is outside the circle. Darius studied the plan. What do you need from me? Briar met his eyes. Nothing, unless I ask. Silence. Then he nodded. Your trap, your call. The words settled something between them that neither apologized for. They spent the next 2 hours preparing. Celia volunteered before anyone invited her. If I am still apparently the fragile Luna who nearly died yesterday, no one will question why I want to inspect my own tack. Briar looked at her. You enjoy this too much. I almost went over a cliff. I deserve a hobby. Even Vale laughed. By sunrise, 6 replacement saddles rested beneath guard in the moon hunt pavilion. Each carried a hidden moonfire mark known only to Briar. One suspect was told Darius would ride Saddle 1. Another heard Saddle 2. Lady Verena's senior steward was allowed to overhear Saddle 5. No one was told the entire pattern. The hunt gathered beneath a pale sky. Pack alphas arrived in winter cloaks. Council riders moved between horses. Servants carried bows, blankets, and silver flasks. Everything looked ceremonial. Nothing felt safe. Briar stood beside Darius's horse, checking the same buckle for the 3rd time. You are afraid, he said quietly. She looked up. Yes. Good. That was not what she expected. Fear means you are paying attention. Briar studied him. You are not going to promise nothing will happen? No. Why? Because I cannot control everything. The admission sounded expensive. I can promise that if your plan changes, I will listen before I decide. Briar's expression softened. That is almost romantic. Do not spread that rumor. Fenris pushed his head against her hip. Too late. He heard it. A horn sounded. Celia mounted her gray mare and joined the first line of riders. Vale approached quickly. Briar. She heard the urgency before he spoke. 1 saddle is missing. Her stomach dropped. Which one? Saddle 4. Briar froze. That was wrong. None of the suspects had been told Darius would use 4. She ran to the pavilion. 5 saddles remained. Briar pulled a moonfire lamp from beneath the table and passed it over the marks. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Saddle 4 was truly gone. Briar grabbed the abandoned girth from Saddle 4's rack. Blue wax marked the buckle hole, but beneath it she saw something worse. A new cut made from the opposite angle. Whoever had taken the saddle knew their first pattern had been discovered. They were no longer repeating the old crime. They were already improvising. Her eyes snapped to the riding list pinned to the post. Saddle 4 had never been assigned to Darius. It belonged to Celia. Briar turned toward the field. Celia was already riding through the eastern gate. The first line of hunters disappeared beneath the pines. Briar's blood went cold. The conspiracy had adapted. They had spent all night protecting the king. The killer had chosen the one person everyone thought had already survived. Stop the hunt. Darius spun toward the gate. A second horn sounded from beyond the trees. Too late. Celia was already heading toward Stone Gorge. The first scream came from somewhere beyond the pines. Briar was already running. Horse! Commander Vale shoved the reins of a waiting bay into her hands. She mounted and kicked hard. Darius swung onto his own horse behind her. Fenris, the royal wolf, vanished into the trees. The trail dropped through Blackridge forest. Briar heard riders ahead but could not see Celia. Then, another sound reached them. Leather snapping. Faster. Her horse surged forward. They broke through the pines as the trail opened onto Stone Gorge. Celia's gray mare was running wild along the cliff road, and the saddle was sliding. One girth strap had torn free. The second hung by a narrow strip. Celia clung to the pommel. Celia. The Luna girl looked back. Fear crossed her face. The remaining straps split. Briar drove her horse alongside. Take my arm. I'll pull you down. Then we both fall somewhere less embarrassing. Celia almost laughed despite the terror. The saddle rolled. Briar leaned across the gap and caught Celia's wrist. For 1 second, both women hung between running horses. Then Briar hauled her sideways. Celia struck the bay's neck, but Briar locked an arm around her waist. Behind them, Celia's saddle fell beneath the gray mare and shattered against the stones. Briar pulled her horse to a stop. Darius reached them seconds later. Are you hurt? Celia slid down, shaking. Only my dignity. You still have that? Briar asked. Barely. A roar exploded from the trees. Fenris. A masked rider burst from the lower trail, carrying Celia's broken saddle across his horse. He's taking the evidence. Fenris was faster. The wolf slammed into the rider's horse from the side. The man fell hard but rolled clear, reaching for a knife. Fenris pinned him with one massive paw. Alive, Darius commanded. The wolf's teeth stopped inches from the man's throat. Vale and 2 guards arrived and dragged the rider upright. Briar knelt beside the recovered saddle. The hidden cut was exactly where she expected. But beneath the moonfire mark, she found something else. A tiny thorn branch stamped into the leather. Her father's mark. Lady Verena arrived with the council party 10 minutes later. Her expression barely changed when she saw Celia alive. What happened? Briar stood. You already know. Verena's gaze cooled. Careful, child. Darius stepped between them. No, let her speak. Pack alphas, council officers, and nobles gathered. The audience, the conspiracy had always wanted. Briar placed the damaged saddle on a flat stone. This cut matches the damage to Lady Celia's carriage and the king's saddle. Council wax was found in both cases. 6 saddles were prepared to fail during this hunt. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Verena said calmly, circumstantial. Briar nodded. Yes. That answer surprised her. Nell Mercer saw council servants near the tack rooms. Lady Celia was ordered into the sabotaged carriage by council authority. My father's case used the same evidence chain. Someone replaced the original leather after his conviction. Still circumstantial. Yes. Verena almost smiled. Then Briar lifted the saddle. That is why I marked every replacement with moonfire oil. Vale uncovered the lamp. Moonfire washed across the leather. A symbol appeared beneath the girth. Beside it glowed the old Hale thorn. Verena's face remained still. Briar turned the saddle over. My father owned 2 maker stamps. The Royal Workshop stamp was perfect. His personal stamp was not. She pointed. One thorn leans left. Darius stepped closer. That flaw existed only on the stamp confiscated from our home after my father's arrest. Now Verena changed. Only slightly. Enough. Briar looked directly at her. That stamp entered Moon Council custody 10 years ago. Verena's eyes hardened. You think a piece of metal proves treason? No. Briar nodded toward Vale. It proves where the evidence came from. Nell stepped from behind the guards. She was terrified. But standing, I saw Lady Verena's steward take Briar's knife. The steward tried to run. Fenris blocked him. Celia stepped beside Briar, and Lady Verena ordered my carriage changed. 5 alphas moved away from the council. Verena looked at Darius. Your father sent thousands to die for Blackthorn pride. Yours is a dynasty that mistakes obedience for loyalty. Then she turned to Briar. Your father built saddles for kings who sent boys to graves. Briar held her gaze. Then you should have exposed a bad king. The gorge fell silent. You chose to manufacture one. Darius ordered Verena arrested. Not executed. Public trial, he said. Then he faced the gathered packs. Briar stayed silent. Briar Hale was accused under my authority. No one moved. The accusation was wrong. Briar's breath caught. Darius looked at her before continuing. The failure was mine. He ordered Elias Hale's conviction reopened and his name restored pending formal judgment. The king did not offer Briar a title. He gave back what had been taken first. Her family's name. Fenris came to stand beside her. Celia touched Briar's shoulder. Across the gorge, guards closed iron around Verena's wrists. For the first time in 10 years, Briar heard no one whisper traitor when they said Hale. 3 weeks after the moon hunt, Blackridge stopped, whispering Briar Hale's name like a warning. The formal judgment came at noon. Elias Hale was cleared of every charge. His conviction was struck from the royal record, his workshop seal restored, and the crown admitted the evidence had been manipulated. Briar read the decree twice. She did not cry until she reached the stable. Fenris found her sitting between 2 empty stalls, the parchment folded in her lap. Fenris rested his head against her knee. You have terrible timing, she whispered. His tail moved once. Briar laughed and buried one hand in his fur. Later, Celia arrived dressed for travel. You are leaving. My pack has survived 3 weeks without me. I suspect they are becoming dangerously independent. Celia held out a silver clasp shaped like a crescent moon. For luck. I thought Lunas did not believe in luck. We believe in preparation. Luck is what we call it when preparation works. Briar accepted it. Celia smiled. Half the kingdom thinks you are going to become Luna. Half the kingdom thought I was a murderer last month. That puts public opinion into perspective. Their judgment concerns me less than it used to. Good. After Celia left, Briar returned to the royal saddle she was rebuilding. A brass plate waited beside it. Royal Master Saddler Briar Hale. Darius had offered her the position 2 days after Verena's arrest. Not as compensation, not because she had saved him. He had placed her work records on the table and said, You are the best saddler in Blackridge. Briar had answered, That was almost a compliment. It was a fact. She accepted. The stable doors opened behind her. You are working late. Briar did not turn. You are avoiding your counsel. I delegated. That sounds irresponsible. I am learning. Darius stopped beside the bench. No crown, no ceremonial coat. Fenris followed him and immediately abandoned the king for Briar. Darius looked at the wolf. Traitor. Fenris sat. Briar continued stitching. What brings the Alpha King to my stable? Your stable? My name is on the door. Darius glanced at the brass plate. So it is. Then his tone changed. Briar. She looked at him. My wolf chose you before I understood why. Briar glanced at Fenris. Fenris also eats leather scraps. I am trying to be serious. That explains the expression. His mouth almost moved. The bond is there, he said. I know you feel it. She did. A quiet warmth whenever he entered a room, growing stronger each time he stopped commanding and started listening. But a bond is not permission, Darius continued. If you want to leave Blackridge, you may leave. Your position remains yours. Your father's name remains cleared whether you choose me or not. Briar went still. And if I never want to be Luna? He answered without hesitation. Then I will have the inconvenient task of loving the royal master saddler. You make that sound difficult. You argue constantly. You arrest people too quickly. I have improved. Marginally. Fenris pushed his head between them. Briar laughed. Darius sighed. He does that deliberately. Jealous? Absolutely not. Fenris's tail struck the floor. Briar looked at Darius. He was no longer the man who had arrested her on the bridge. He had learned that being king did not make his judgment infallible, and admitting failure did not make him weaker. She set down her needle and took his hand. I do not want the crown to choose for me. It will not. I do not want Fenris to choose either. The wolf huffed. Briar smiled. Sorry. Then she looked back at Darius. But I choose you. His face softened. He kissed her without witnesses, ceremony, or promises he could not control. Only choice. When they separated, Darius noticed the saddle. You replaced the girth again. I strengthened it. You do not trust me? Briar ran one hand over the new stitching. I trust you. She looked up. I don't trust your judgment around saddles. For 1 second, Darius stared at her. Then the Alpha King laughed. And this time, Briar did not need a royal wolf to prove she had been right.